Hey everyone, these are the last notes that we're going to get for the year. These are the human impact notes, the only notes that we're going to have for Unit 11. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce you with goals. So the state standards instruct that students should be able to infer about human activities and how they impact the environment, and also to explain how our use and protection and conservation of natural resources are going to affect each generation. So I'm going to summarize different environmental issues with the cause and effect and potential solution to meet those goals. So some fast facts. It is estimated that more than 50% of all wildlife has been lost in the last 40 years. There's normal extinction rates, and then there is the human-caused extinction rate, which is way faster. Domesticated cattle and pigs outweigh all wild animals 14-1. So you take all the pigs and all the cows and all the farms of the world, just those animals, and they will weigh more than all of the wild animals 14 times over. And that's crazy. And there's only 23% of the planet's landmass remaining as wilderness. That's less than a quarter of the whole planet. Of the land that we have is actually still wild and undeveloped. This is coral bleaching, and it's white because white coral has been bleached, meaning the warmer temperatures that they're experiencing in the water, they don't like it, so they expel their algae that live inside of them as a way to try to survive this change of temperature. But in doing so, they don't survive and they die. And about 10% of all coral reefs at this point are all dead. So we got some problems. So let's talk about some problems and their causes, their effects, and some solutions behind them. So we got a lot of issues, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of them. The first one would be deforestation. We've got a state here in Brazil which clears a lot of their rainforest that's part of the Amazon for cattle grazing and palm oil plantations. Both of those we can consider agriculture. Agriculture is a huge driver for deforestation, but not just companies, not just huge economic deforestation for agriculture. It's also people in their own use of the land to try to grow their own food for their families. That happens too. That's actually more of the deforestation that happens. There's also the development of cities and towns and places to work and eat, and mining for resources. So we need places to live, to eat. We need things to support our lives. And the more people we have, the more this stuff goes up and the more deforestation happens. And once we cut down all these trees, the soil isn't good and it erodes and it doesn't hold water and you can cause landslides. The habitat that was there for the animals is no longer there, and a lot of them will go extinct or move into other areas. And all the water and gas exchange happening in all those plants and animals, that's going to affect the climate now that all that has changed. There's so much water in the rainforest, and there's so much CO2 getting taken in by the rainforest that not having them will change the chemical composition of the air and change our climate. So what can we do? Well, there's mitigation. We can try to make it not as bad by changing the way that we cut. We can try to cut more sustainably by cutting selectively instead of everything all at once. You may remember that from earth science. We can have different laws, legislation to give rights back to people to control their own land instead of larger companies, or restrict certain farming methods and how we farm. We can try replanting lots of trees. Or you yourself can change your own consumer habits, how you buy products, and the products and things that you buy, they're all going to have their own environmental impact. So if you buy palm oil products, they have to plant lots of palm oil trees in rainforest areas and get rid of those rainforests to have those products. And a lot of palm oil products could be like Pepsi products or different bathroom products. They can contain these things in them. And instead, choosing more sustainable products, things that have already been recycled and are just being reused and have less of an impact. So here we have a glacier. So it was a lot higher in 2006, and then in just 3 years, it has dramatically reduced in size. So this is an example of climate change and global warming, which happens way more dramatically in the Arctic areas. So these colder areas get warmer more than our subtropical areas here. So a main driver of climate change is the amount of carbon dioxide in the air. So by burning fossil fuels, we add lots of CO2 into the air. By removing forests, they would take in CO2, but without them, they're leaving that CO2 in the air. And then, of course, there's natural causes of changes in the sun, volcanoes, and ocean patterns. Those will naturally change climate, but there's plenty of human influence that are changing it in an unnatural way. So temperatures get warmer, so what? Well, that can melt ice, that can change the habitats and ruin the habitats of the Arctic species. All that ice can go into the water and cause sea level rise and sea level flooding, coastal flooding of coastal cities. And the different climate can change weather patterns and make certain places have more droughts. Other places will have more floods. So we can mitigate or adapt. We can mitigate by trying to reduce the amount of climate change impact that's happening, or we can adapt and say, it's going to happen anyway. Let's try and focus on what we can do to lessen the damage that happens, that's already going to happen. So by reducing the amount of carbon dioxide through renewable energy, reforestation, preventing deforestation, we can support the climate chemical balance that we want. Or we can adapt. Climate changes regardless, so we protect ourselves from the floods and the droughts that are going to happen. So you might have seen a sign like this if you ever go fishing anywhere, to not eat the fish in that area. Well, a lot of these signs show up when you're downstream or near a power plant. Coal plants have a lot of mercury as a byproduct of their production of energy. And that mercury can get into the fish or into what the fish eat, and then they eat a lot of whatever that is and build mercury inside of their bodies. So this is called bioaccumulation, and it can happen with pesticides, toxic metals like mercury, plastics that we eat, or plastics on the things that we eat. And this can lead to a lot of health issues in humans and a lot of endangered species. There were a lot of different birds that almost went extinct because of the pesticides that we were spraying. Not because they were getting sprayed with pesticides, but because they ate bugs that were accumulating these pesticides. So algae might not have a lot of pesticides sprayed on it, but the zooplankton eat lots of that algae and build it inside of them, and then that process continues until it gets into the top organism that's really building lots of that material in their own body. So Rachel Carson brought a lot of attention to this with her book Silent Spring. So once we know about these things, we can start to pass laws to restrict certain pesticides or chemical components in industries. We can make economic policies about what you can and can't use or put money into in terms of how much pesticides there are being used. We can make personal choices about how we take care of our yards and the herbicides and pesticides we use there. We can make sure that we're responsibly using resources like those products and like the plastics that we buy and like the energy that we consume that is coal sourced. And of course, with the pollution already there, you got to have methods to try to get it out. And there are methods of using plants to try to filter a lot of the pollutants out of the ground and the water. And of course, we already went over eutrophication. There's some other examples of environmental issues like invasive species. You might remember that from earth science. Plastic pollution is a huge problem because it doesn't break down the way it's supposed to. It doesn't break down like any natural thing on the planet. It sticks around for a long time. Coral bleaching we already mentioned. But with more population growth, there's going to be more resources and use of those resources and pollution created, so there's going to be more impact. But if we control the amount of population growth, if we make better personal choices, if we improve legislation that influences how we use and make products, we can reduce the amount of resources, we can reduce the amount of pollution, and we can reduce our total impact on the environment. So there's some cool videos about this stuff and some practice, but if you want to learn more about this stuff, check out my AP Environmental Science class. Sign up for it. I'd love to see you guys in there. Anyway, hope that was helpful, and have a nice rest of the day.